This is Planet 76, your source for all things Philadelphia 76ers. We've got another great episode coming your way today, and we're cleared for takeoff. Let's go. All right, welcome back, 76ers fans, to Planet 76, your source for all things Philadelphia 76ers. My name's Troy. I've got Michael here with me as always. This is episode 83 of Planet 76. Going to break down Sixers action over the last week. So 2 games with Orlando, a game in San Antonio, and then right back to the East Coast to play the New York Knicks at the Garden tonight, recording on Sunday the 5th. Going to break down all that, look ahead to what's next on the schedule, look at the Eastern Conference, see how things are shaking out. Talk about some guy who got traded from Brooklyn to Dallas, and Kyrie Irving, pretty crazy. And yeah, it's going to be a fun episode, so make sure you follow us on Instagram, Planet76 Podcast. You can email us at planet76podcast@gmail.com as well. And
do that.
What else? I don't
do
even
that
know.
for
Just
sure.
make sure you subscribe, whatever platform you're on, Spotify, YouTube.
Follow
us
us
on
on
Twitter.
Twitter.
Yes, we have a Twitter now. So follow us there. We're gonna try and be active on Twitter as much as we can. And yeah, good call there. So Michael, man, I don't even know where you wanna jump in with this, but yeah. So 2-2 on the week for the Sixers, and you can fact check me on this one, but the two games where the Sixers had 20-point leads are the 2 games that they ended up losing. I don't think they got over a 20-point lead in the other games. So yeah, 4 games, 2-2.
Yep.
Thoughts?
Well, a lot different than this
Yes.
time last week, that's for sure. Pretty all over the place this week for the Sixers. Lost to the Magic, beat the Spurs handedly, might I add, and then just stink it up in this Knicks game. And I mean, I'm not again. I kind of keep the same mentality as beginning of the season. I'm not going to put too much stock into this because although they definitely should have beat the Knicks tonight, I'm not really too. What's the word? I'm not really too concerned about it. I think you're not going to win every game. That's the same mentality that I've had. Even really good teams lose games they shouldn't lose. And I'm not trying to excuse anything because I don't think there's any excuses that should be made or need to be made for this team. They were bad tonight in this game. And they were bad in the Magic game on Monday. So I think next week's going to be a lot different, and this Celtics game on Wednesday is going to be a wake-up call. Hey, listen, we're supposed to be a contender. Let's really play like it. Let's really dial in to what we've built since the turn of the calendar, since January. They were the best team in the NBA in January. It's February now. Happy February, everybody. Groundhog saw the shadow, so we have 6 more weeks of winter. They were the best team in the league in January.
Yeah.
Let's get back to that. Let's not shy away from that. Let's double down on who we are and what we're doing, and let's continue to build. And I think this Celtics game on Wednesday is going to be a real. I mean, it's going to be a test. It really is. They haven't played. Well, they just played the Nuggets, but they haven't. They don't play teams as good as the Celtics every night. So this is going to be a good test. To test their identity, to test the strength of their offense, because the Celtics are good defensively, really good defensively. So I think this next week is gonna be good for this team.
Yeah, I agree. I think that one's obviously one you have circled all year long on the calendar, but given where the Sixers are, given where they've been, and what you mentioned a moment ago, the last month and a half, it's important. And so, there are only 2 back in the loss column of these Boston Celtics, so they are going to play on Wednesday. It's nice to get a couple days off between that game, between where Sunday in New York and then before heading up to Boston on Wednesday. So should be a fun one there. I do have some. So like I said, I mean these the game against Orlando and the game that they lost and the game against New York both had a lot of similar things in them. So a huge, great start for the Sixers early on, and then a blown lead, and then. It's not like they were blown out in the fourth quarter, but it was like a game the Sixers could have won, and it just got ugly offensively for the Sixers to me in both of those games. Like, it was like, what are they doing? Possession after possession in the fourth quarter. I do have some in-game tweets from some Sixers pages that I follow that I just want to give you a chance to respond to. I'll read them, and you can respond to them one by one. Yes,
from this
the
game tonight
against New York. So... Sixers Adam, who I followed for quite a years. Yeah, I like him, big fan. He said this during the, shortly after the first quarter. He said the Sixers lead New York 35-24 after one quarter. Their lead in that was once 21 points. Montrezl Harrell played a minute and 41 seconds in that first quarter. And in those 101 seconds, the Sixers were outscored 9-0 to end the quarter. It seemed like it was going for a blowout, and it became not a blowout. So your reaction to that and, watching that unfold even. Montrezl Harrell. Thoughts? Nothing.
I think I did last week. I gave Harrell props. Do you remember if I did? I don't remember.
Yeah, in a recent episode.
You can roll the clip if you find it. Recent episode, I said, "Hey, Harrell's good. Harrell's been great. I'm still not super high on him," and I did say that on my page too. So I'm doubling down on that. Harrell's good, and I said this too once they signed him. He's not. What's the word? He's not. Is keen the word? He's not too keen defensively.
I like it.
I mean, I'm going to look up the word. In the meantime, I think when it comes to defense, I don't even think he knows.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't even think I know. He's not good defensively. And he's undersized, so that doesn't cater towards being good defensively, especially if you're gonna be the center. We've said this. We've both talked about this on here. I've talked about it independently as well. It's gonna cause issues, and it kind of is. So the Sixers need a defensive-minded backup big man, and if it's not Paul Reed, it's gonna have to be somebody else because it cannot be Montrezl Harrell. It cannot be Montrezl Harrell. And I think this last week or so showed why. You can't have a guy who can't defend when you have leads and Embiid comes out. You need somebody reliable to defend in place of Embiid when he's off the floor. And like I said, if it's not going to be Paul Reed, which it very well could be, but Glenn is just infuriating.
Well, I've got a tweet for you for that too.
If it's not gonna be Paul Reed, it's gonna have to be somebody else. Daryl Morey is gonna have to intervene. He's gonna have to say, you know what, man, you're not really giving Paul Reed a chance, and he can be a difference maker. And I don't know how Morey feels about Paul Reed, but I think that he would agree with most of us Sixers fans when we say, dude, we need defense from our backup center. And Paul Reed can do that. So if it's not going to be Paul Reed, Daryl Morey, you are going to have to intervene and make a trade to force Glenn to play somebody else aside from Montrezl Harrell because he's not going to get the job done.
Here's what I'll say about Montrezl Harrell. He's, the games where he has 15, 16, 17 points and 8, 9 rebounds or whatever, he's great to root for, a lot of fun, a lot of energy, this, that.
Mm-hmm. But, I agree.
And there is a but. Years past, when he was sixth man of the year on other teams, other scenarios, when he was averaging 17, 18 off the bench, it was easy for those teams, those coaching staffs to ignore what he brings on the defensive end or lack thereof. Now that he's in Philly, he's behind Joel Embiid, the best center in the Eastern Conference, and it's a little different. So, if he's not putting up, the numbers offensively, then you're going to notice the defensive issues, and that's what you do notice. And so, the question, I guess, that Glenn has to answer, that the team has to answer as a whole, and, something you just mentioned is, like, this team needs what in the backup center? Do they need offense or do they need defense? Because that's really the difference between these two guys. Now, Paul Reed shows some flashes of offense. He also shows some pretty bad offense at times, but
I think when it comes to Reed versus Harrell, I think Reed's offense and defense outweighs Harrell's offense and defense, because Reed is better defensively than Harrell is offensively. And I think Reed's also better offensively than Harrell is defensively. Why do I keep doing this? Reed is much more capable offensively than Harrell is defensively.
Right.
Because at least Reed is mobile. He can kind of create his own shot. He kind of has a jumper a little bit. And Harrell, he's a good scorer.
Right, but he's not at the production he has been in years past for just whatever reason it is.
Right, and like you said, and the production that he's giving you offensively is not enough for what he gives up defensively. Some guys in the league can get away with that. Guys like Trae Young, guys like Luka Doncic can get away from that. And even lesser players. I'm trying to think of a lesser player. Like, Kyrie Irving is just an easy example, I think. He's not really that good defensively, but what he gives you scoring-wise, shooting the ball, makes up for what he lacks defensively, and Harrell does not fit that. I think Paul Reed does. I think for what he is defensively, for what he is offensively, he makes up for it defensively. For Harrell, what he is offensively, he does not make up for it. What he is defensively, he doesn't make up for it offensively.
Right. Exactly. And
that's
I
the
think
difference,
that, in
between
years previous, again, if you would have said that statement preseason, I would have disagreed. Because I'm like, well, look what Harrell has done every other stop he's been at. He gets buckets. And not to say he hasn't had games of doing that here, but like the consistency isn't there. And again, whether it's just because of shortened minutes or this or that, or because he's behind Embiid or he doesn't really fit the offensive scheme, like whatever it is, the production isn't there where it's outweighing or making you forget the defensive issues. And so we're definitely in agreement there.
Right.
If he is in, those bursts of offense are nice when he does it, but they're not enough because we're having this conversation clearly. Exactly. Sixers, Adam, to talk to you about that, the run that the Knicks went on. This is just disgusting. So from that last 2 minutes of the first quarter, so the Sixers were outscored by 32 points in the last 38 minutes of the basketball game. 32 points in the last 38 minutes. And here's what he had to say about that matchup. He said, I think it lines up with what we're saying. He said, there's a chance that Paul Reed does not end up being a viable backup center, but that is not a definite yet. Meanwhile, Montrezl Harrell is certifiably not that, the backup center. Reed should be playing so the team has a larger sample to evaluate, and it might even help his development to play. I think you would agree with that 100%. Yeah.
100% agree. I like to be not analytical about things, but I like to break things down and take things apart, but I can't because that's perfectly said. You
know what tonight reminded me of? In these,
are you gonna talk about your boy?
We will
Deuce
talk about him. So Deuce McBride and Evan Fournier going off for 17 and 14 or something like that. Combined for like 30, 31. So that was kind of, not gonna lie, Deuce McBride's kind of my guy, so that was kind of cool to see. But so early on, he hit the three at the end of the first quarter. I was like, yeah, nice. And then when he hit the one in the corner in the fourth quarter, I was like, crap. I shouldn't have been rooting for him. He
ended up with like 15
he had
points.
A good game, and
I think he outplayed Grimes, didn't he?
Yeah, and Grimes was, I think, a little bit of foul trouble too. So pretty cool to see that, I will say. But Sixers get the loss. And again, what it reminded me of is in the fact that, these non-Embiid minutes, I had flashbacks to the days of Amir Johnson and Greg Monroe watching that tonight.
My.
I hate to say those words on this podcast, but that's what came to my mind because of how drastic the difference with Embiid on the floor versus off the floor. There was one in-game tweet somewhere in the first half. Joel Embiid was a plus 23. James Harden was a plus 20. And so the Sixers should be up, 20? No, they were up 4 at that time. Pretty sad. Joel Embiid was a plus 25 with 8 minutes to go in the fourth, and the Sixers were losing by 4. Again, these are tweets you would recognize from several years ago. So that's kind of obviously was an issue tonight. It's been an issue in other games this year. We're not hitting the panic button or anything yet, but Michael, I will say this: the trade deadline is Thursday. We've seen a huge deal, between the Nets and the Mavs, but. I mean, I don't know. Are Sixers fans in your circle that you're aware of, or is it you that are thinking, even like Sixers Adam? That's just what I call him, Sixers Adam. That's what he said. Montrezl Harrell isn't that guy. We're not sure if Reed is. So does that mean the Sixers are looking for a big man? Your thoughts there as we head closer to the deadline.
And the question is...
Do you think the Sixers are looking for a big man, or should they be, or are they going to do anything at the deadline? Do you have any predictions?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they are, but they should be. Especially based on this conversation we're having. It seems that we're both in agreement, and from what I've seen on my page, just scrolling Instagram and things of that nature, I don't really go on Sixers Twitter that often. I only really go on there, every couple of days just to see what people are talking about. But mostly Instagram, mostly my comment section. Seen a lot of backup big man talk. I've seen a little bit of backup guard talk, which I think the backup guard situation is fine, especially if Maxey, even if he doesn't, but especially if Maxey continues to come off the bench. But even if he begins to start again, I think that situation is fine. I think the Sixers seriously need a backup big man. Like I said, it's not Reed. It can't be Harrell, so it's going to have to be somebody else, which means they're going to need to make a trade because nobody else on this roster can play center. Because nobody else on this roster can play center for an extended period of time. I guess Tucker can, but he's starting. So that brings to the conversation something I saw yesterday. Is Jared Vanderbilt from the Utah Jazz, former Minnesota Timberwolf, who was traded in that Rudy Gobert trade. Probably the best piece of that trade, to be honest. And I don't know how much you know of that guy, but what I will say is that, and people were saying, the main objection to Vanderbilt, what I've seen, is he's undersized, he's not good offensively, which are not really true because he is 6'9", but he plays a lot bigger than he is, and for his size, not even for his size, just in general, amazing defender, way better than Harrell and Reed combined. And he's also good offensively. He can do a lot of things Paul Reed can do. He can shoot a little better, not great by any means, but he can shoot, he can stretch the floor a little bit, but you're mainly getting him for defense. He can rebound, he can switch, he can defend the pick and roll, he can defend the rim. That's exactly what you need from a backup big man. And I don't know what it would take to get him. I personally would be willing to overpay for him by a lot. I'd be willing to give up quite a few players for him. Not sure how Daryl Morey feels, but I know he's ever since he got here, he's been active at the trade deadline. I think he's made a trade every single year. The George Hill trade, which was abysmal, but it's fine. And the Harden trade, obviously, which we're coming up on a year on that, by the way. How crazy is that? So, I have my trust in Daryl because I know that he is not afraid to make trades, nor should he be, because he's a smart dude when it comes to basketball and roster construction, as we know. Jared Vanderbilt, I'm all in. Like I said, I'm willing to give that. I'm willing to give the Timberwolves a lot. I know the Sixers don't have a lot to give per se, but I'd be willing to overpay if they would accept the players that the Sixers have. I mean, I would imagine Thybulle's in the deal, which I'm fine with. I'd imagine. See, then the question becomes, well, what do they give up?
That's
do the Timberwolves want Thybulle, Korkmaz, Harrell, and a pick, second-round pick, maybe 2 second-round picks? I would do that. I would so do that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. That is the one name I've seen. It's reported that the Sixers have interest in Jared Vanderbilt. Would not mind it either. I don't think. Again, if it's what you just mentioned in Matisse and maybe Montrez and picks or whatever, it's not going to mess with the Sixers, plans or rotations at all. It's not giving up anything that's a key at the moment because, again, we're talking about Harrell on this episode a lot and hasn't been exactly positive. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see if they make a move. I do agree. There's no need for guards. I love our guards.
That's what I'm saying. When it comes to what the roster itself actually needs, Jared Vanderbilt would very much complete the roster. After that, there aren't really many weaknesses when it comes to the actual talent of the roster and how good the roster is. Obviously, there's a difference between performing and how good you are, talent versus production, but still, in theory, the Sixers, that would put the Sixers, that would give them a leg up, and that would really round out the roster.
Yeah, he's good. He's good. And, I guess the biggest question is that, what we don't know is, now, from what I've read and what I've heard about him, he can guard 3, 4, 5. I just hope that. I don't know. I don't know if he plays a lot of 5. I really don't know. Because obviously that would be what we'd probably be asking him to do. Now again, you're backing up Joel Embiid, so it's a huge plus. You go out there for your 12, 15 minutes a game and give it all you got, and come have a seat. But so we'll see. We'll see what happens. Anything over the next few days on that. So I did have one other problem tonight. I know we've had several problems with the Knicks game, but I did have another problem. And I want your thoughts on it.
Okay.
So I noticed late fourth quarter, the Sixers had their starting lineup in the game, which most cases that'd be like, all right, cool. However, Tyrese Maxey is not in that starting lineup as of late. Mm-hmm. He finally checked. Last 6-7 minutes maybe. I don't know when the starters came in, but Maxey did not check back into the game once he checked out until like a minute and a half left, and the game was over. It was like a 9-point game at that point, and I didn't like it. I think Maxey should be on the floor to end games. Now again, I get there'll be situational, so this might be a difficult question to answer. But if you take anything situational, you take anybody like who's, someone's really, really hot tonight, they need to stay in the game to end. Like any of that, just surface level before a game starts, who is your 5 on the floor, you think, to end the games? Because I think Maxey needs to be in there, but then what do you do with the other guys? Who comes out?
Well, Harden and Embiid needs to be in there. Maxey needs to be in there. 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
And you mentioned it, which is good. You mentioned it. It's situational, obviously. But I think most times Maxey needs to be there. Then you can fill out the other 2 with Harris, Melton, Tucker. That's it.
Right.
Closing 5. If we're talking last 4 minutes of the game, I want my best possible lineup out there. I'm not really too concerned with fit. Again, situationally speaking, okay, maybe fit is more important. Maybe I want Melton out there for defense and Tucker out there for defense. But I think Maxey, Harden, Embiid, any combination of Tucker, Harris, Melton.
But who?
And very occasionally George Niang.
Yes.
If you need threes, then it's fine.
Right.
But that's it. That's where I draw the line.
Right.
100%.
So pretend that, again, we don't know who they're playing. We don't know who the other team has on the floor. We know there's 3 minutes left in the game. It's a tie game. We don't know who's done what so far in the game. You know, you're the coach or whatever, and you're just a fan. Leave it at that. You're just a fan, and you want to know you want who on the floor. So those three: Embiid, Maxey, Harden. But who is the odd man out of who you mentioned? Tobias, PJ, and DeAnthony Melton. Who is not in that 5?
Yeah, I mean, it depends.
Yeah, just give me one.
No, I mean, I guess Tucker.
Okay.
But it just depends. It's so situational.
It is.
Because sometimes I'd say Harris.
Yeah.
Really, I would, because if you need some stops,
right.
I want my best defensive unit out there. And I don't know the statistics, because there is lineup data out there somewhere, and I don't have it. It exists, I just don't have it. But I'd like to think a lineup with Tucker, Melton, and Embiid is the best Sixers lineup. Plus, obviously, Harden and Maxey, plus whoever. I feel like those three, plus whoever, is probably the Sixers' best defensive combination. So I'd like to have them out there on the floor if I need stops. But if I need scoring to keep my lead, I'd be more inclined to say Harris and Melton, or Harris and even Niang. If I'm running Maxey and Harden, I can Niang 3, Harris 4, Embiid 5.
Right.
It's just like it's totally, not totally, like I said. It is situational, but sometimes it's not. It really just depends.
It does. But I think if I take situational out, I take opponent out of it, I take lineup, size, matchups, all of that. I'm a fan of the 3 guard Harden, Maxey, Melton.
Yeah.
I just am. It's looked good at times. I just like it. I think that just gives you so many different options. And that's a very, very difficult lineup to defend, especially the way DeAnthony Melton is scoring and playing and shooting. And now again, if I think if you were to go to analytics and look at lineups and look at defensive ratings for these 5 and that 5, and if the sample size is large enough and you see this 5 that I just mentioned with the 3 guards and they're pretty consistent with the other group. If you throw PJ Tucker in there, they're consistent with another defensive lineup, and they're close enough, then it's a no-brainer to me of you go with the 5 that have the best chance to put the ball in the basket if the defense isn't, kind of similar to the Harrell Reed debate. If the defense isn't that big of a difference or that big of a loss, then you go with the 5 that can put the ball in the hoop. It's the name of the game. So that's my thought there. Enough complaining about the Knicks game. We're going to officially close the book on that right now, and we're going to move on. So Boston Celtics on Wednesday in Boston. Your thoughts on that? Again, we talked about it a little bit, and then we can take a peek at the Eastern Conference standings here. And then we'll wrap it up. So Eastern Conference standings: Celtics 37-16, Milwaukee 36-17, followed by the Sixers, who are now 34-18. Again, just 2 back in the loss column. Brooklyn Nets, that dumpster fire, 32-20, still pushing along. Cleveland Cavs 33-22, Miami Heat 29-25. Knicks, Hawks, Bulls are all within a couple games for 7, 8, 9, and then the Wizards are 24-28 and actually would be in the playoff right now at the 10.
Wow.
Believe it or not. So, yeah, big one with Boston on Wednesday. Your thoughts on that one?
Well, it's a huge game, and the Bucks have done a lot to retake that second seed from the Sixers. And I think at this point, nothing's guaranteed, obviously, but with Kevin Durant continuing to miss games for the Nets, the gap between the Sixers and the Nets is going to go even further. And the Cavs could come up a little bit more. They're 2.5 games behind the Sixers. So I think at this point, the Sixers are pretty much... Well, nothing's really guaranteed, obviously, but I'm comfortable saying the Sixers can still end as a top 3 seed, maybe 4 at worst. But this game is huge against the Celtics. I feel the same as I did with that Nuggets game. I think the Nuggets and Celtics are of the same caliber when it comes to overall well-roundedness in their roster. Celtics are much better defensively than the Nuggets are, and they usually play Embiid pretty well, so that's something to monitor. And I think their depth could give the Sixers some issues. Guys 1 through, let me think about this. Brogdon, White, Williams. Yeah, guys 1 through 8 to 9 can really hurt you off their bench. And that is something that could also give the Sixers issues. Brogdon has been amazing in the running for 6th Man of the Year. Derek White is fantastic. Grant Williams is a great shooter, good defender.
Yeah, they're a good team. That's why they're at where they're at, right?
Yeah, exactly. So this is gonna be some proving grounds for the Sixers for sure.
Sure, definitely an opportunity to prove something. Show that they belong in the Eastern Conference. And while we're at it, so we're gonna finish with a little game here. But actually, I have one more tweet to read. This one's just funny. I saw it about the Hawks. The Atlanta Hawks, who are currently 27-27. This was back
I think I know what this is.
Back when they were 26-26. They're the most average team in the world. So they're 17-17 against the East, 9-9 against the West. They're 8th in the Eastern Conference standings out of 15 teams, so right in the middle. They, again, 2 games ago, they had scored 6,057 points, and their opponents had scored 6,057 points. So they are literally the most middle-of-the-pack team in history, it seems, at this point, because that's just crazy. They are perfectly 500, currently sitting at 27-27. But to wrap it up tonight on episode 83 of the pod, Michael, we're going to play a little game of Contender or Pretender, looking at the Eastern Conference. And here's the question for it. If they're a contender, and what I mean by contender, to clarify that here for this episode, the purposes of this one, is they have a chance, or they're a threat, a possibility to make the Eastern Conference Finals. Not finals contenders, not championship contenders, but hey, this team in the East could make a run to the conference finals. I'll name a few, and you say contender or pretender. We'll start with what might be a softball. So those aforementioned 27-27 Atlanta Hawks, contender or pretender to make the Eastern Conference Finals?
Pretender.
100%. Atlanta Hawks are pretenders.
100%.
All right. Brooklyn Nets.
At this point, they're a pretender, unfortunately, with no Kyrie. If he was still there, I'd maybe be a little more.
Yeah, a little bit of issues there in Brooklyn. All right. Boston Celtics.
Contender. That's pretty obvious. Unless you've been living under a rock, which I don't know. Maybe you are.
Milwaukee Bucks.
Contender as well.
Okay, pretty obvious there. Obvious. Cleveland Cavaliers.
Pretender. I am so low on the Cavs.
So low on the Cavs. Cavs have no shot to reach the Eastern Conference Finals.
No, they don't.
Okay. Let's do...
That's going to age so poorly.
2 more. Miami Heat.
Contender.
Contender?
Yes.
Is that because of a guy by the name of Jimmy Butler?
That is because of Jimmy Butler.
His ability to, will his team to victory. All right, last but not least, the Philadelphia 76ers. Contender or pretender, Eastern Conference Finals?
Contender, I guess.
I
don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
It's hard to. I get it. It's hard to because they haven't done it yet.
It's hard,
right?
man.
They haven't done it yet. All right, that is contender or pretender for the Eastern Conference. Michael is not too sure about the Sixers.
I am literally just...
but based on what you said, because 2 teams have to get there, right? And you named 3 teams definitely, and then the 4th would have been the Sixers as a yes too. So 4 teams for 2 spots.
Yeah.
4 teams for 2 spots, which have been, 4 of the better teams in the East, obviously, over the last number of years. All of which have gotten there in what you just mentioned, besides the Philadelphia 76ers. So, all right. We got a Super Bowl next Sunday.
Yes, sir.
I don't know if you want to drop a prediction for the Birds and the Chiefs. I'm going to drop one. I'm going 31-27 Birds.
Cool.
All right, Eagles, Super Bowl champs.
Love it.
31-27. You heard it here on Planet 76.
Go.
What do you think?
I like it.
All right. We're sticking with that. Planet 76, episode 83. We are out. We will see you next time after the Super Bowl.
Woo.
We'll see. Peace. If you are a Philadelphia 76ers fan, this is the podcast for you. Planet 76, a weekly podcast covering all things Philadelphia 76ers. We'll see you next time.